It's only in a righteous-led society that those who rule can begin to point fingers at whoever beneath them is incorrigible. And even then, it's still their responsibility to correct whatever has led to their citizens going astray rather than use them as scapegoats for the shortcomings of their own leadership. So in order to make our suit and tie wearing leaders better stand out in the crowd for what they truly are, our uniform will be anything but a suit and tie, anything informal. In fact, the more earthy and creative a species it is, the better. And we don't enter office to be polite either. We know when we're elected, it's a mandate for us to go to whatever capital of whatever state, or to Washington, D.C. itself, to be as big a pain in the ass as possible by exposing their corrupt inner workings to our constituents by leaving no stone unturned to find out what might slither out from underneath it. When we lose elections, we take it as a sign that all is well and go home where we belong. Our nation's founders foresaw a future for our young nation that would be overrun by every manner of scoundrel, cheat, and liar. All successful revolutionaries find out early on that as soon as they're out of the way by being deposed, killed, or simply dying peacefully of natural causes, what they built will be corrupted because potential new tyrants are being born every day or are waiting for a chance to get their hands on the control of the future freedoms of other human beings so they can screw up their lives. They, however, had the unique foresight to understand that they wouldn't have had to see so many of their brothers in arms die at their sides if there had been a political alternative to the war they had to fight. So rather than leave our future to the success or failure of another violent uprising, they gave us the tools we needed to kick the enemies of freedom's ass without staining our hands with their blood. Then they retired and hoped we'd find a way to use what they left behind to bring the kind of stability to society they had envisioned but knew they wouldn't live long enough to make a reality. Our forefathers were outlaws. The new party of outlaws is the rebirth of an old principle under a new flag, only without the thunder of cannons and fallen shoulders. The new party outlaw is more than democracy in action. It's American democracy at its finest. If you would like to see the knee pads on the other foot for a change, vote Party of Outlaw and watch the sparks fly. When the dust settles, maybe we'll be able to find a way we can all stand up and walk together without anyone feeling the need to bend freedom over ever again, because her future potential molesters will learn that if they try, they will have to go through a party of outlaws in order to get their filthy hands on her again. So I bet by now you're thinking this all sounds great, that the timing is right for this kind of revolution, that it adds a nice ring to the thud of absolute failure that's been rolling our way on the alternative to the new party of outlaws. Clearly the founding fathers didn't finish what they started, and neither have we. But it's hard to change it when everything appears to be running smoothly. Like they say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That would seem to be especially true when it comes to messing with the structure and motivation behind supporting the most powerful and successful nation in the world, China. What I mean is that as much as we've harped on China to change its ways, I doubt even the most outspoken against them would demand they change too abruptly right now, with so much of the rest of the world dependent on their economic stability for survival. On the other foot, the U.S. isn't as important as we used to be, and we're broke. So after 235 years, we finally have enough room away from the center of the world's focus to iron out a few wrinkles that have been screwing up the experience of being free since the United States was first conceived. But it ain't going to happen if the only plan the Party of Outlaws has is for a bunch of rogue Americans who want to help find a better path towards freedom to simply wear anything other than suits and ties. That's a worse idea than wearing them in the first place if there isn't any substance to go with it. So here's the trick. Below is a link to BobbyFontaine.com. It's my campaign headquarters. I'm running for Congress in the 11th District of Virginia, just across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C. George Washington's home, Mount Vernon, is here. Gunston Hall, George Mason, the father of the Bill of Rights home, is here. I jog in Mason's old stomping grounds, much of which is a bird sanctuary for bald eagles now. There are battlefields from the Civil War here. The 11th District of Virginia was central to a lot of keynotes in American history. I live in Fairfax County. We pretty much don't produce much of anything here but governments and corporate bureaucrats. In fact, we don't really even do that. We grow them and send them here so we can support them in ruining the country. We're one of the top wealthiest regions on the planet. We consume more than almost anywhere else in the world. Trucks full of goods almost never leave here, while most everything that's imported is ultimately paid for with your tax money. I've lived here almost all my life. When I was a kid, back before our government had grown into the gluttonous monstrosity it is today, much of northern Virginia was rural. Now it's all one big giant suburb where people don't even know each other, while most are sensitive to the fact that they work for the federal government. Many insensitive jobs are supporting those who do. These are the people who do the dirty work of running our nation, if they work at all. And they get paid a heck of a lot of money to do it that way. So there's no real sense of community here, even amongst most neighbors. We're a bunch of small towns turned, not big city, because cities have cultures built around the industries and innovative lifestyles that support them. We don't have any industry or innovation anymore, unless it's related to supporting the federal government and screwing up the country and the world, or them aiding Wall Street in their bid to do the same. In both cases, it's about taking as much of your money as possible while giving as little in return for it. I call them the people that love free money. I grew up in the heart of the American Revolution on the dividing line between the North and South the last time this nation nearly crushed itself under its own weight. Now I live in the belly of a beast that's unrecognizable compared to its past glory. If we're going to rehabilitate freedom, perhaps this is the best place to start. That's irrelevant because this is where I happen to live, and the party of Outlaws is my innovation. But I don't think it's coincidental that this is where the solution will come from. I was greatly influenced by growing up here. I also read the Washington Times and Washington Post in my younger years. So I've kept a pretty close eye on how they do things around this town for a long time. In fact, I know more than many of them do about how they do business, even though I've never been one of them. I started following stories in the 1980s that are at the center of much of what's gone wrong with everything happening today, most of which the details of aren't talked about openly anymore, or not so that you can understand what's really going on. When they change course to hide the truth about mistakes they've made, or simply make mistakes purposely because it suits their interests, they tell the public something wholly different than what they're actually doing, if they tell us anything at all. That probably doesn't strike many of you as anything new. I, however, have made a career of following up on keeping track on what they actually do. Then I run campaigns to exploit their weak points to either force them to stop what they're doing or change course, where I follow their trail through whatever new gimmick they come up with. Either that or it makes it harder and very expensive for them to keep doing it in the same old crooked fashion. So I know a lot of their secrets. In fact, I've even helped bring us to where we are now by pushing them around while they refuse to change course, but rather use their power and arrogance to keep headed in directions that were fruitless before I threw a wrench into their game plan. People do stupid things sometimes. It seems the worst of us happen to do it right here, while the pit they're digging themselves and us into keeps getting deeper around a few core issues. Since Washington isn't really Washington, but a proxy state for Wall Street and the world's bankers, I've had a lot of success pushing them around, since our true rulers live somewhere in the Swiss Alps or spend most of their time hitting golf balls if they have to be stationed inside the United States. It's not unlike how the American Revolution was able to be successful against overwhelming odds, because the other team's leaders were not here but an ocean away in England, issuing orders at the courtside of whatever royal ball they were attending. Since they have so much control over the flow of information, along with what they thought once was an endless supply of cash supplied by you that they could use to tie up loose ends until the last few years, I've been unable to defeat them outright. Since they have no pride in the game they play ruling over the future of freedom anymore, there are no rules. The few they do have, they cheat at if it doesn't support an outcome that favors them. The key to their downfall and the rehabilitation of our freedom is information. If you knew what I know, the game would be over. We're just beginning, really, because no matter how you juggle the truth, we have a lot of work to do in order to clean up the mess they've made. But we're a resilient people, which is evidenced by the fact that we're still standing even after what they've done to us so far. I mean, just think about what we can accomplish if we aren't always being led to work against ourselves. The stories that I have to tell don't just affect my home district of Virginia. They're facts that relate to your district as well, perhaps even worse than mine. In fact, it's likely you're suffering much worse than we are here, because the worse they make it for you, the more money they print and tax you to keep the government running. So business here is booming while you tighten your belts to ensure that it stays that way. The point is that you might also have stories to tell that no one has been listening to, things that the whole country ought to know about. This is how the Democrat and Republican parties work. They combine their collective concerns to form a party platform, which they use to support their individual candidates. So if I have information that can blow holes in what we're being told about any particular problem that's sensitive enough to lead to big changes simply by becoming accessible to mainstream America, then so do other party of outlaw candidates. If my getting credit for exposing the truth helps me at the ballot box, it will do the same for you as well, since your Democratic and Republican candidates will be on the other side of the issue. Either that or they'll have to concede that their party has been wrong about the issue for however many decades they've been lying about it. Take, for instance, a story I followed in 1990 in the Washington Times, when it was never published in the Washington Post. It was about an additive to gasoline that gives 20% more mileage with 70% less pollution. The Washington Times used to be a great source of information that no one outside Washington was supposed to know about. It's owned by Reverend Sun Myung Moon, the head of the Moonies cult, who recently was allowed to proclaim himself God in the rotunda of the Capitol building by my Senator Warner, a Republican. Before that, the Washington Times simply covered stories from what they thought were conservative perspectives in order to support the Republican Party. Sun Myung Moon said